Hi everyone, welcome to week 1 of Lit 215. I'm just going to walk you guys through in this video a little bit about multicultural American literature and give you a rundown of what our assignments are for this week. So let's go ahead and get started. Alrighty, so the assignments we have for this week are pretty straightforward, I hope. You'll have readings. There are 4 total. The first 2 are, one is a reading from an anthology of American literature, just taking you through some major eras in literature, because we're really covering a huge expanse of authors and time periods and events. And so I think it's just good to have kind of a general overview of like, this is what we're looking at. There's also a video on defining multicultural literature, which I hope will give you a better sense of really what it is we're studying in this course. And then there are 2 examples of multicultural literature for this week. One of them is called Planet in America, Set and Subset. And this reading essay article is quite challenging, so I do encourage you to take your time with it. Take notes as you go. See if you can really just get a sense of what the author is trying to say about how we define American literature and why. And really, when you think about it, he's sort of arguing that we are really only a piece of a much larger system. So that kind of changes how we look at literature as a whole. And then Sonri Says is an example from your textbook, the Hear My Voice anthology. And it's a really good example of the type of literature we're going to be looking at this semester. So once you've done those readings, I would start those first. I would start them early. Then you're going to have 2 assignments this week. Your first reading reflection and then discussion board number 1. Your reading reflection is pretty straightforward. Just tell me what your thoughts are on these readings. Was there anything confusing to you? Anything that was new? Anything surprising, exciting? Anything that made you mad? Really just a response to the readings. Make sure that you either quote or give examples from the readings so that I know that you read it and that you're not just speaking generally. And then in our discussion board, you'll have a specific question to answer. One that kind of introduces you to our class, and then the other is a kind of commentary on Sonri Says in particular. So hopefully this week won't be quite as crazy as some of ours coming up, but I want you just to get your feet under you, get comfortable with the class, and let me know if you have questions. So the idea this week is that we're really just looking at, from a broad lens, what is multicultural American literature? And for me, based on sort of the information I've gathered for y'all, I would define multicultural American literature as works of fiction and nonfiction that comment on, challenge, and shape our understanding of stratified social systems in the U.S. So very commonly, multicultural literature talks about experiences of people who are outside the majority culture in the U.S. Not always, but many times. So when you think about multicultural, I want you to remember that that's not just racial. That just because something is written by an African American person versus an Asian American person, that's only one way to look at literature. We can also think in terms of gender, in terms of age, in terms of sexuality, and also in socioeconomic distinction. These are all pieces of what shape our societal norms and our societal values, and also what shapes our reflection of those values in literature. So when we talk about multiculturalism, I think a lot of people immediately think of, oh, you are multicultural if you are both Black and white. And that's part of it, but it really is also a much more complex system than that. So try not to kind of minimize this type of literature just by race and ethnicity. So one important piece of multicultural literature is that it reflects current events and lived experiences. So something that's really important to understand when you approach each of the readings that we do is that you want to have as much kind of background knowledge as you can. What I really like about our anthology, actually, is that each reading, for example, just pick this one, Different Cultural Levels Eat Here, has a description at the top of who the author is and what their experience is and what kind of current events they're commenting on. I think this is really important when you're looking at multicultural literature because it's set in a time and a place and within a certain group. So if you're not sure what someone's talking about in a piece, look it up. If you don't remember, like if you in a class previously talked about World War II, but you don't remember exactly what this person's referring to, look it up. This semester, I'm actually breaking the readings down into themes based on our anthology. So we'll start with borders and then move on to love, conflict, family, personal identity, and then celebrations. These are not exclusive. These are not the entirety of the categories multicultural literature fits under. Like, for example, you'll notice friendship is missing here. You'll notice education is missing here. You'll notice that travel, culture shock. There's so many themes we could go with, but I think this is a new way I'm using to kind of look at multicultural literature, and I'm interested to see what you guys think as we move along. So each week, I'm going to kind of present you all with some questions I want you to think about as you go through these readings. So what multicultural literature have you read previously and why? Was it a book for a class? Was it something you picked up on your own? Was it something that you heard about? And then in terms of multicultural literature, what are you interested in knowing more about? This is going to be important when we get to our project, which I'll talk about in just a minute. Other ideas in thinking about multicultural literature as a whole: who decides what we read? And in that decision, who gets to decide what we remember? This is really important when you think about what we teach in our schools, how we choose our reading curriculum. What we choose to focus on is intrinsically tied with what we choose to read. And I think that's like the sort of key component of challenging traditional perceptions, is by challenging that traditional canon, that group of books that we all read. And then finally, why is multicultural literature important to you, to us in this class, and then to just us as a society or as a world? I think that we all have reasons for why we're in this course and why we're looking at multicultural literature, and I'm interested in what that means specifically for you. So the other thing I wanted to mention this week, just so you're thinking about it, is that we're going to be starting our literary project next week. So this was described in our syllabus. I have a screenshot from the syllabus here. And, although we're going to read so many stories and look at so many authors in this course, there's no way we could cover them all. And chances are that there's something that you specifically are interested in that we might not touch on. So your literary project is a chance for you to explore a theme, a perspective, an idea, a culture that you want to know more about. So what you'll do in week 3 actually is choose a theme that's interesting to you, and you're going to develop a question about that theme, and that's going to kind of drive the rest of your project. So the end of the project will kind of culminate in a final project piece that can either be an essay, a poster, a video, it could be a PowerPoint, it could be an original literary piece that you write, or it could be a combination. So this project is something I've done several times in lit courses, and it always goes differently each time. So just be thinking about a possible theme or focus. You could choose one of the themes we're looking at in the course, or you could choose a different one. The first piece of the project will be a thought paper, which is really just a way to kind of start working through some of your thoughts on multicultural literature and the challenges that it presents to us. So the assignment sheet for the thought paper is up in your week 1 folder if you want to check it out and start thinking about that. That's due next week. But just keep in mind, this project is coming. So when I start talking about it next week, don't freak out. It's going to be done in pieces. Although this is an 8-week course and it'll be fast, don't stress, we will all do it together. All right. So I'm really excited to kind of hear your thoughts on the readings for this week and to see how these projects start for you guys.